The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was a marvel of shimmering alien architecture, its towering spires reflecting the starlight of 1,000 systems. The room, normally filled with representatives from dozens of species, was eerily tense today. Each delegation sat in their designated seats, eyeing one another with barely concealed animosity, the undercurrents of political conflict palpable in the air. At the center of it all stood the human delegation, led by Ambassador Lila Ward, a sharp-minded negotiator who had served the Council for years. Lila's calm demeanor belied the storm brewing within her. Humanity had been growing too quickly for the Council's comfort, its colonies stretching across vast stretches of unclaimed space, its technology outpacing even some of the galaxy's older races. While the majority of the galaxy's species had accepted humanity's rise, some, especially the older, more established civilizations, saw it as a threat. The latest proposal, known as the Galactic Expansion Policy, was the culmination of months of covert discussions behind closed doors. The policy aimed to restrict human colonization in certain key sectors of space. These sectors were rich in resources the Galactic Council deemed vital for the continued stability of the galaxy. The humans, however, viewed these areas as their natural right to explore and develop, a right that had been affirmed in their early treaties with the Council. The proposal would undermine humanity's autonomy, limiting their growth potential and threatening their economic future. The debate began, and Lila found herself standing at the front of the room, addressing the assembly of species from all corners of the galaxy. Her voice was steady, but the weight of the moment pressed on her. "We are a young species," Lila began, her words measured but resolute. "We have not yet reached the full scope of our potential, but in these short years we've proven our worth to the galaxy, not only through our technological advancements but through our commitment to peace, cooperation, and shared prosperity." She glanced at the screens displaying the faces of alien representatives, her gaze unwavering. "This proposal, this restriction on our expansion, will not only hurt humanity, but it will destabilize the very foundation of the Council. We cannot stand idly by while our future is decided for us." The tension in the room thickened as Lila's words echoed through the chamber. The representatives from the older species, especially the Tsakar, an ancient insectoid race, and the Vrikal, a cold-blooded reptilian species, exchanged glances. These two factions had long been distrustful of humanity's rapid rise. They had watched as humans expanded into regions they had long considered their domain, and they were growing increasingly vocal about limiting humanity's reach. The Tsakar representative, a sharp-faced creature with multiple antennae twitching in irritation, rose to counter Lila's speech. "Ambassador Ward," he began in a hiss, "while your species has made strides in technology and expansion, we cannot ignore the threat your unchecked growth poses to the delicate balance we've worked so hard to maintain. You claim to be peaceful, but your expansion has been aggressive. You've encroached upon the territories of other species, and now you demand to be allowed to take more. How can we trust your intentions?" Lila's fingers tightened around the edge of the podium. She was prepared for this. "We don't ask for more than what we deserve," she responded calmly. "We seek only to explore and settle within the neutral zones, regions that have been unclaimed for centuries. Humanity does not seek to dominate anyone. We simply wish to expand and build, as any species would in our place." The debate raged on for hours, but despite her eloquence, the mood of the room shifted. The arguments against humanity's expansion began to grow louder. Lila could feel the weight of the Council turning against her, the votes already swaying in the wrong direction. She knew it was only a matter of time before the decision was made. Humanity's future within the Galactic Council was hanging by a thread. And then, as expected, the vote came. The proposal passed with a majority vote. Lila's heart sank as she watched the screen confirm the outcome. The decision was final. Humanity had been cut down at the knees. The room erupted in a mix of murmurs and angry outbursts, but Lila stood still, her mind racing. She had anticipated the possibility, but the reality of it stung harder than she had imagined. This was not just a political setback. It was a sign of something much darker. Humanity was no longer just a player in the Council's game. They were a pawn being pushed aside. Outside the Council chambers, the cold silence of space awaited. Humanity's place among the stars had just been irrevocably altered. Lila took a deep breath, forcing herself to maintain composure. But deep down she knew. This was the beginning of something far bigger than just a political defeat. The galaxy was about to change forever. As the final vote was tallied, the atmosphere in the Council chamber grew heavy with an oppressive silence. The last few seconds dragged on as Lila stared at the screen, her mind racing through the consequences of the decision. She knew the Galactic Council's vote would seal humanity's fate, but she hadn't anticipated the force with which the decision would impact her people. The proposal had passed with overwhelming support. Humanity had lost. The chambers buzzed with the murmurs of representatives, their voices a cacophony of victory for some and resentment for others. Lila's pulse quickened as she tried to steady her breathing. The council members who had pushed for this restriction now exchanged smug glances, their confidence in the vote unwavering. The Tsakar, with their cold, calculating eyes, were already discussing the next steps of implementation, while the Vrykul, larger than life in their reptilian skin, seemed almost gloating. But Lila's thoughts weren't with the council anymore. Her mind was on her people, the ones who had faced the brunt of this betrayal. The human fleet, stationed in orbit around distant systems, would be the first to feel the sting of the decision. The colonies, the ones fighting to expand, would now find themselves confined within the narrow bounds the council had set. This wasn't just a political setback. It was a death sentence to humanity's growth, an extinction of their aspirations. Lila turned to the human delegation behind her, her face tight with frustration. The quiet tension in their eyes mirrored her own. The humans had always been seen as a rising force in the galaxy, and for the first time, that trajectory had been violently interrupted. The older races had secured their foothold, and humanity was now relegated to the shadows. Without a word, Lila stepped down from the podium and approached her fellow diplomats. The time for diplomacy was over. "We leave," she said in a low voice, her decision final. The words hung in the air, as if the mere suggestion of abandoning the council was an act of defiance they hadn't yet fully grasped. The shock on the faces of the human representatives was evident. "What do you mean?" asked Marcus, one of the younger diplomats who had been fighting for a peaceful resolution. "We can't just leave. There are too many ties to the council. Economies, trade, our reputation. If we abandon them now, it could create a galaxy-wide conflict." "We are already on the brink of one," Lila replied, her tone calm but filled with the weight of finality. "The council has shown they won't hesitate to cripple us if we stand in their way. They've already decided our future for us. We won't be treated like children. If they want to box us in, we'll go on our own." Marcus opened his mouth to protest but stopped. The look in Lila's eyes was one of unwavering determination. She had seen the writing on the wall long before this vote, and she knew what had to be done. Humanity couldn't thrive under the boot of the Galactic Council. Not anymore. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered coldly, her voice now carrying the weight of command. "We'll make our exit immediately. No more diplomacy. No more waiting." The humans filed out of the chamber in silence, but as they made their way toward the council exits, they could already feel the change in the air. Outside, beyond the political games of the council, the vast, cold expanse of space stretched before them, an open canvas ready to be claimed. No longer shackled by the bureaucratic confines of the council, humanity now had the freedom to shape their own destiny. The news of humanity's decision was broadcast across the galaxy within hours. The council's leadership scrambled to control the narrative, but the damage had already been done. The ripples of humanity's departure were already being felt in the distant corners of the galaxy. Many species, still loyal to the council, viewed the move as a declaration of war. Others, however, saw it as a sign of rebellion, a challenge to the established order. In the shadows of the galaxy, Groups of dissidents and rogue factions, some disillusioned by the Council's corruption and overreach, began to see humanity's defiance as a beacon of hope. And as the first human ships left the Council's territories, another question arose. Could humanity carve a place for itself outside the rule of the Galactic Council? The stage had been set. The galaxy's political landscape would never be the same again. And Lila, for the first time, allowed herself a small, determined smile. The fight had just begun. The human ships, sleek and powerful, drifted away from the Council's headquarters like a quiet storm, their departure marking the beginning of something far bigger than anyone had anticipated. Within hours, the galaxy was in chaos. News of humanity's decision to break away spread like wildfire across the stars, igniting heated debates on every world. The Galactic Council, once a unified authority, now found itself on the brink of collapse. Torn between factions loyal to its old order and those who viewed humanity's exit as an opportunity for change. On Earth's homeworld, Ambassador Lila Ward stood before a massive holographic map, tracing her fingers over the various star systems that humanity had claimed. It was a vast network, sprawling across dozens of star systems. Now, all of it was under threat. The Council's retaliatory actions had already begun. Economic sanctions were levied, and Council-aligned fleets began massing on the borders of human territories. Humanity was now a pariah among the stars, a lone wolf in a galaxy that was used to the predictable rhythm of interspecies diplomacy. But Lila wasn't worried. Not anymore. She had known that breaking away from the Council would trigger a conflict, but she had also known that humanity's strength was something the galaxy would soon learn to respect. Their military forces, while not the largest, were battle-hardened and technologically advanced. Their ingenuity and adaptability had always set them apart, and now was the time to prove it. "We need to consolidate our power," Lila said, turning to General Marcus Hale, the human military commander who had supported her decision from the start. He stood with his arms crossed, watching the map intently. His eyes were sharp, his expression stoic, but there was an undeniable fire in them now, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. "We already have several alliances in the works," Marcus replied, his voice low but confident. "The Trilari, the Valthor, and a few other fringe species are starting to contact us. They've seen what the Council is capable of, and they're ready for change. They'll side with us." "Good," Lila said, nodding. "We need every ally we can get. Let's make sure they know we're not just a political statement. We're a force to be reckoned with." As the human fleet prepared to set course for a new stronghold, the Council's retaliatory forces were already making their move. The first confrontation came in the outer reaches of human-controlled space. A fleet of Takar warships, sleek and deadly, jumped out of hyperspace, their weapons primed and ready. The Takar had always been one of the more aggressive species in the Council, and they saw humanity's departure as an open challenge. Their goal was simple: cripple humanity's military presence before it could gain any further momentum. What the Takar didn't expect was humanity's ability to adapt. General Hale had foreseen this exact scenario and had prepared accordingly. The human fleet, using unorthodox tactics, turned the tables on the much larger Takar force. Rather than engaging head-on, the human ships used their superior maneuverability and smaller size to strike at key targets, supply lines, communications hubs, and vulnerable warships. The battle, which was expected to be a crushing defeat for humanity, turned into a stunning victory. The Takar fleet was scattered and severely damaged, retreating back into Council space. The human forces, though not unscathed, had proven their capability. News of the victory spread quickly, shaking the foundations of the galaxy. Humanity, it seemed, was not only willing to fight, it could win. Back on Earth, the celebrations were muted. Lila and Marcus watched the reports of the battle unfold, their expressions serious. It wasn't time for pride. It was time for action. "We've shown them we're not to be underestimated," Marcus said, his voice rough with the weight of the victory. "But this is just the beginning. The Council will come after us with everything they have. Lila nodded, her eyes hardening. Let them. We're ready. We will unite those who have suffered under the Council's rule. And together, we will reshape the galaxy. The human fleet moved forward, taking control of key sectors and strengthening its hold on strategically important systems. But it wasn't just military might that made humanity a force to be reckoned with. It was their ability to inspire and lead. Species that had once been on the fringes of the galaxy's politics now saw in humanity a chance to break free from the Council's dominance. In the darkest corners of space, rebel groups began to form. Some were disillusioned former Council members. Others were struggling colonies that had long been neglected by the centralized government. The galaxy, once content under the rule of the Council, was now a powder keg, with humanity lighting the fuse. But not everyone was ready to follow humanity's lead. Many species, especially those who had long benefited from the Council's stability, viewed humanity's rebellion as a dangerous destabilization. The Vrekel, the insectoid Zakar, and the technologically advanced Athenians were quick to mobilize. The Council's political machine was far from broken. Humanity had made its first move, but the real war was just beginning. And Lila, standing at the helm of humanity's destiny, knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. The spark of rebellion had been lit, and now it was up to humanity to fan the flames. The aftermath of humanity's surprise victory over the Zakar fleet sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The rebellion, once thought to be a foolhardy gamble, was now a serious threat to the stability of the Galactic Council. The Zakar's retreat only fueled the fires of rebellion further, and soon, more and more species began to question their loyalty to the Council. Humanity's military prowess was now undeniable. The once dismissed human fleet had proven itself on the battlefield, and their tactical genius had stunned even the most battle-hardened races in the galaxy. Lila's strategy of taking high-value targets, communications relays, supply chains, and remote outposts had crippled the Council's response capabilities. Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. They were dismantling the very infrastructure of the galactic order. As Lila stood before a holographic map of human-controlled space, her mind was sharp and calculating. The map showed a series of newly established human strongholds, rapidly expanding into previously contested systems. The fight was far from over, but humanity was gaining ground, and they had no intentions of stopping. "We've made a serious impact," General Marcus Hale said, his voice grave but tinged with cautious optimism. "But now the Council will hit back harder. They won't just send warships. They'll rally their strongest allies. The Vrekel and the Athenians will join forces, and that means a much bigger threat is on the horizon." Lila nodded, her fingers tracing the boundaries of their expanding territories. "We've taken the first steps, but we need to make sure our alliances hold. We can't fight this alone." The galaxy was on the brink of all-out war. Humanity's departure from the Galactic Council had set off a chain reaction, destabilizing old power structures and sparking a wave of political unrest. New alliances were forming at an alarming pace, and the very fabric of galactic politics was beginning to unravel. On one side, the Council's factions, those loyal to its authoritarian rule, scrambled to maintain control. The Vrekel, a reptilian species known for their militaristic tendencies, were quick to declare their unwavering support for the Council. The Athenians, a highly intelligent and technologically advanced race, saw humanity's rebellion as a threat to their own dominance in the galaxy. These factions, along with the Zakar and other more conservative species, were preparing for the inevitable clash. On the other side, a growing coalition of rebel species began to rally around humanity's banner. The Trilari, a once neutral species known for their skill in diplomacy and espionage, reached out, offering their support in exchange for humanity's promise to challenge the Council's oppression of smaller, less powerful species. The Valthor, a nomadic race with a deep distrust of the Council, had also pledged their loyalty, bringing with them valuable resources and advanced shipyards. Humanity was beginning to forge an unstoppable alliance, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. The first skirmishes between the two factions were brutal. As Council-aligned forces pushed into human-held space, a series of border skirmishes erupted. The newly formed human alliances held their ground, but the battles were costly. Ships were lost, casualties mounted, and the specter of war loomed larger than ever. On one such front, a fleet of human ships, bolstered by their new allies, intercepted a major Vrykul task force that had been sent to retake a strategically significant system in the Outer Rim. The battle was fierce, with both sides losing significant numbers. But humanity, with its innovative approach to warfare, had managed to outmaneuver the Vrykul, taking control of the system. The battle was a victory for humanity, but it also marked a turning point. The Vrykul, enraged by the defeat, withdrew but made a chilling threat. This war will not be fought in the shadows anymore. The Council's wrath is coming. Back on Earth, Lila watched the reports come in. The galaxy was on fire, and humanity was at the center of it all. The war for the galaxy's future had begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. "We need to solidify our position," Lila said, her voice firm as she turned to Marcus. "The Council will no longer see us as a minor threat. They'll come at us with everything they have. It's time to prepare for the storm." Marcus met her gaze with a nod of understanding. "We're ready." But Lila knew better than to be overconfident. While humanity had made huge strides in securing territory and forging alliances, the real war was just beginning. The Council had deep resources, vast fleets, and a political grip on the galaxy that would not be easily shaken. Yet one thing was clear. Humanity had set the galaxy on a path that could not be undone. The old order was crumbling, and a new power had risen to challenge it. Whether it would be enough to topple the Council remained to be seen. But Lila, along with every human soldier and ally, was prepared to fight until the very end. The galaxy, once a place of fragile peace, was now a battleground. And humanity, the most unlikely of contenders, had just thrown the first punch. The universe was no longer the same. Once united under the banner of the Galactic Council, the galaxy now divided into two factions, the Council's loyalists and the rebels rallying around humanity's banner. Tensions between the factions escalated rapidly, with the ever-present threat of all-out war hanging over every system. Humanity's challenge to the status quo had triggered a cascade of events no one could have predicted, least of all the Council itself. In the heart of the human stronghold, a massive warship named the Resolute stood ready, its sleek hull gleaming in the cold light of distant stars. Inside, the command center buzzed with activity. Lila Ward paced before a large holographic display, her mind constantly processing the mounting pressures from every direction. Reports from the front lines were grim. While humanity had gained territory, they were paying a heavy price in blood and resources. Another skirmish near the Valfor border. General Marcus Hale reported, his voice steady but carrying a weight of frustration. "We've held them off, but they're pushing harder with every passing day. The Vrykul have doubled their efforts to push us back, and the Athenians are now sending covert operatives to sabotage our supply lines." Lila frowned. The Vrykul, the Tsakar, and the Athenians were becoming more coordinated in their attacks. Despite the early victories, the tide was beginning to shift. Humanity's war was no longer just about military might. It was a war of attrition, of resources, and of alliances. "What about the Trilari?" Lila asked, turning toward the tactical officer. "They're still hesitant," the officer replied, his tone wary. "They're supporting us in smaller ways, providing intelligence, some supply runs, but they're not ready to fully commit. They fear retribution from the Council. The Valthor are more vocal in their support, but they don't have the military strength we need." Lila rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. She had expected this, a slow uphill battle, but the magnitude of the conflict was taking a toll on everyone. Humanity's allies were spread thin, and the Council's forces had more resources and a much larger fleet. She needed to do something bold, something that would rally the galaxy to their cause. "Prepare for an emergency summit," Lila said decisively, her voice ringing with newfound purpose. "We need to bring our allies together. It's time to show the galaxy we're not backing down." The next few days were a blur. Representatives from the Trilari, Valthor, and other rebel factions arrived at the Resolute in a flurry of diplomatic negotiations. It was clear the galaxy's factions were divided. Some were afraid of the Council's wrath, while others, like the Valthor, were more eager to challenge the established order. Lila, standing before a holographic council of her allies, outlined her vision. "We can't just fight individual battles and hope for the best. This isn't just a war for territory. This is a war for the future of the galaxy. The Galactic Council is a tyrant that holds the galaxy's potential in its iron grip. If we allow them to destroy humanity and our allies, we'll be lost. But if we unite, if we fight together, we can reshape the galaxy and bring about a new era of freedom." Her words were met with mixed reactions. The Trilari were cautious, nodding but still hesitant. The Valthor, though more enthusiastic, voiced concerns about the long-term sustainability of the conflict. But the spark had been lit. For the first time since humanity's departure, the various factions were beginning to see a common cause. And then, in a surprising turn of events, a new ally emerged. A transmission from a previously unknown faction, a group of outcasts and former council allies who had secretly been preparing for their own revolt. These were the Exilar, a species whose former loyalty to the council had been shattered by years of manipulation. With their advanced cloaking technology and expertise in sabotage, they offered their services. Lila stared at the message, her mind racing. The Exilar were powerful, intelligent, stealthy, and highly resourceful. With their help, humanity could strike at the heart of the council without being detected. The Exilar's presence would be the game changer they needed. "Get them on board," Lila ordered, her voice firm. "If we can secure their support, we will finally have the strength to challenge the council directly." Meanwhile, the council was far from idle. Its leadership, under the directive of the Vrekel and the Athens, had begun an all-out campaign to crush the rebellion. Large fleets of council-aligned warships were moving closer to human territories, intent on wiping out any sign of rebellion. The galaxy was now a powder keg, each side poised to spark the final conflict that could engulf the stars in flames. But for the first time since humanity's departure, Lila felt a surge of hope. The galaxy was divided, yes, but it was also fractured, and that fracture could be exploited. The rebellion had allies now, and humanity was no longer a lone voice crying in the wilderness. Together, they could topple the council's reign. The storm was coming, and this time, humanity would not be the one to cower in the shadows. They would strike first, with the fury of a galaxy that had had enough of the council's tyranny. It was time to make the galaxy remember who humanity was, and that they were not to be underestimated. The calm before the storm had passed. With the strategic alliances in place and a new surge of hope coursing through their ranks, Lila Ward knew that the time had come to take the fight directly to the heart of the Galactic Council. The preparations had been exhaustive. New fleets were built, secret weapon caches stored, and the human forces, bolstered by their new allies, including the Exilar, were poised for the kind of strike that would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The plan was simple but audacious. Humanity would launch a surprise attack on one of the Council's most fortified systems, the Vrekel stronghold of Xantar. This system was key to the Council's military operations, and its fall would cripple their ability to retaliate effectively. It would also send a message to the galaxy that humanity's rebellion was not a mere spark, it was a raging fire. Lila stood on the bridge of the Resolute, her eyes scanning the vast expanse of space. Through the ship's panoramic windows, the stars seemed to shimmer with the quiet tension that filled the air. Her mind raced, calculating every potential outcome. But in the end, she knew that no amount of preparation could account for the chaos of war. "We're ready, Admiral," Marcus Hale said as he entered the room. His face was stoic, but there was a palpable energy in the air between them. The humans and their allies had trained relentlessly for this moment. Lila nodded, steeling herself for what was to come. Launch the fleet. Let's make them feel the weight of our defiance. The human fleet, along with their Valthor and Exilar allies, moved in perfect unison. Their ships were fast and precise, a testament to humanity's innovative edge. They traveled through the outer rim, carefully avoiding the main council patrols. The Exilars' cloaking technology made their approach nearly undetectable, and within hours they were within striking range of Tantar. The plan was to hit them hard and fast, overwhelming the system's defenses before the council could mobilize a counterattack. The first wave of human ships, equipped with precision strike weapons, would disable key communication hubs and defense platforms. After that, the main fleet would engage the Vrykul warships head-on, using their superior tactics to outmaneuver and destroy them. As the fleet dropped out of hyperspace, chaos erupted. The first wave of human ships struck like a hammer to the heart of Santar's defenses. Energy pulses flashed across the void as the enemy defense platforms were obliterated in seconds. The Vrykul, taken completely by surprise, scrambled to organize a defense, but it was too late. The Resolute led the charge into the heart of the battle, its sleek form cutting through the darkness as it unleashed devastating blasts of energy at the Vrykul warships. Explosions lit up the void, and debris rained down upon the battlefield. Humanity's forces moved with terrifying precision, taking out key strategic targets, systematically dismantling the Vrykul's military stronghold. The battle raged for hours, the sound of explosions vibrating through the fleet's communication systems. Human and Valthor forces fought side by side, their coordinated attacks proving to be too much for the Vrykul to counter. The Exilar, meanwhile, remained invisible, infiltrating the Council's communication networks and creating chaos within their command structure. Inside the Resolute, Lila could feel the tension in the air, but there was also an undeniable sense of resolve. They were doing it. They were winning. Their plan had been executed flawlessly so far, and it was only a matter of time before the Vrykul fleet would be destroyed, their position at Santar rendered useless. But just as it seemed the battle would end in humanity's favor, a new threat emerged. A massive Vrykul flagship, the Ironclad, appeared from the far side of the system, cutting through the debris of its fallen comrades. Its hull was massive, nearly twice the size of any ship humanity had in its fleet. It opened fire immediately, launching a barrage of plasma weapons at the Resolute. Lila's breath caught in her throat as the ship shook under the impact. The Ironclad was a formidable opponent, but humanity had faced greater challenges before. The tactical officer barked orders, sending the Resolute into evasive maneuvers. The human fleet responded, splitting into smaller groups to avoid the full brunt of the enemy's fire. Lila clenched her fists, her focus unwavering. "We need to disable their weapon systems," Lila said through gritted teeth, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "Send a strike team to their engine core." Marcus nodded, tapping commands into the console. A squadron of human and Valthor fighters launched into the fray, darting toward the Vrykul flagship. Explosions flashed in the distance as the fighters engaged in a deadly dance, dodging incoming fire while targeting key weak points in the Ironclad's hull. The battle dragged on, and for a moment, it seemed as though the tide had turned against humanity. But the human fleet's resilience and creativity shone through. The Resolute's weapon systems recharged, and with a well-timed salvo, the Vrykul flagship's main weapon systems were disabled. The Ironclad was crippled, drifting helplessly in space, vulnerable to a final, decisive strike. Lila gave the order, and the Resolute unleashed its final blow. A barrage of energy pulses that tore through the Ironclad's core. The flagship exploded in a massive burst of light, its remains scattered across the stars. The battle for Xantar was won. Humanity had dealt the Council a devastating blow. As the dust settled, Lila stood at the command center, looking out at the carnage. The stars around them seemed to hum with the echo of their victory. "We've sent a message," Marcus said quietly beside her. "The Council won't underestimate us again." Lila nodded. "This is just the beginning. The storm is only getting started." And as the human fleet pulled back to regroup, the galaxy, now aware of humanity's power, would never be the same again. The victory at Santor sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Vrikul flagship, the Ironclad, lay in ruins, its remains drifting in the void like the shattered remnants of the Council's authority. Humanity's forces had achieved a monumental feat, and news of their success spread rapidly across the stars. Yet, in the heart of the Galactic Council's headquarters, the impact of this rebellion was felt far more deeply. The Council was not a singular entity. It was a coalition of races, each with its own interests. But the unified power of the Council had always been its most potent weapon. Now, with humanity's rebellion tearing at the fabric of the galactic order, that power was at risk. The Council's leadership convened in an emergency meeting, a rare gathering of its most powerful members. The Vrikul, the Tsakar, the Athenians, and the other key factions who had long profited from the old status quo. "Humanity has dealt a significant blow to our supremacy," said Korath, the Vrikul High Commander. His reptilian features were twisted in anger. "Their audacity is unmatched. We can no longer afford to be passive. We must retaliate with everything we have." The Athenian representative, a tall, shimmering being named Valera, spoke calmly, though the fire in her eyes betrayed her fury. "Our resources have been spread thin, Korath. The loss of the Ironclad is a heavy blow. We cannot risk sending our entire fleet to hunt them down. We need to strike smartly." "There is no room for subtlety," Korath growled. "Humanity's defiance is an affront to the entire galaxy. We must show them that their victory was fleeting." Valera's gaze turned cold. "Then we shall build a trap." Meanwhile, back in human-controlled space, the victory at Santor was still being celebrated, but the atmosphere among Lila Ward and her commanders had grown tense. The reports were pouring in from their expanding territories. While humanity had secured key systems, the pressure was mounting. The Council would not let this rebellion go unanswered. "We cannot afford to get complacent," Lila said, standing before a large holographic map of human-controlled space. "The Council will retaliate. They'll bring their full might to bear on us, and we need to be ready." General Marcus Hale stood at her side. His arms crossed as he watched the map unfold. "They've got a lot of ground to cover, but they have resources we don't. We need to strengthen our alliances. The Trilari are still hesitant, and the Valthor could use more time to rebuild. If we don't get reinforcements, we may be overrun." Lila nodded, tapping her fingers against the map. "We can't let that happen. I'll personally reach out to the Trilari again. We need them, now more than ever. If we can't hold our ground, this rebellion ends before it truly begins." Just as she was about to issue the order, an alert sounded. A new fleet, far larger than anything humanity had ever seen, had entered their system. The Council had come for them. The battle was unlike anything humanity had faced before. The Council, determined to crush the rebellion, had assembled an enormous force, a fleet that outnumbered humanity's by a significant margin. The Vrikul had sent their largest warships, accompanied by the Athenians' advanced vessels and the Tsakar's terrifyingly efficient war machines. Lila watched from the bridge of the Resolute as the enemy fleet appeared on the edge of human-controlled space, darkening the stars in their wake. It was a show of force designed to intimidate, to make humanity bend to the Council's will. "We're outnumbered," Marcus said, his voice grim. "But we have one advantage. They don't know how we fight." Lila turned to him, a determined glint in her eyes. "Then it's time to show them. We'll use the same tactics that worked at Santor. We'll hit their supply lines and communications first. Divide their forces. Make them panic." A tactical officer interrupted, his voice urgent. "Admiral, we've detected a new class of weapon aboard the enemy flagship. It's capable of disabling our ship's engines and weapon systems in one shot. We'll be sitting ducks if we let them get within range." Lila's mind raced. The weapon could turn the tide of the battle, but they could not afford to let the enemy get close. The fight would be a race against time. "We'll need to take down their flagship first," Lila said, "no matter the cost." The battle unfolded with brutal intensity. Humanity's fleet, though smaller, fought with unparalleled ingenuity, launching surprise strikes against key enemy vessels. The Exhealer used their cloaking technology to infiltrate the Council's fleet, sabotaging their engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. The Valthor's ships provided cover for humanity's smaller, more agile vessels, creating a fluid and unpredictable front. But as Lila had feared, the Council's flagship, the Tyrant, with its devastating new weapon, pushed forward. It was an imposing vessel, massive and imposing, its weapon systems primed for destruction. "Concentrate fire on the flagship," Lila ordered, her voice sharp with urgency. The battle raged on as the human ships maneuvered to avoid the Tyrant's massive blasts. The Resolute darted in and out of the fight, launching precision attacks at the enemy's vulnerable sections. The energy weapon from the flagship fired once, then twice, but the human forces managed to evade the worst of its impact. With a final, concentrated assault, humanity's ships focused all their remaining firepower on the flagship. The resulting explosion was a brilliant flash of light that tore through the space around it. The Tyrant was destroyed. The Council's fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, began to retreat. Humanity had once again proven that even when outnumbered, they could strike back with a ferocity the galaxy had never seen. But as Lila watched the retreating ships, she knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not give up so easily. They would return stronger, angrier, and more determined than ever. And humanity would be ready. The aftermath of the battle was a bittersweet victory. Humanity had once again delivered a crushing blow to the Galactic Council's forces, but the cost was high. Many ships were lost, and the price in lives weighed heavily on the shoulders of Lila Ward and her commanders. Yet as she stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the remnants of the Council's retreating fleet disappear into the void, there was a flicker of hope that had never been there before. The battle for survival had taken humanity to the precipice of galactic war, but the rebellion had grown stronger with every strike. The Council had failed to crush them. Instead, humanity and their allies had only become more resolute. It was no longer just about survival. It was about creating a future where the people of the galaxy could stand free, unbound by the oppressive control of the Council. Lila stood beside General Marcus Hale, both staring out at the stars. The silence on the bridge was heavy with unspoken words. "We've done it," Marcus said quietly, breaking the silence. "We've made them bleed. They'll never see us as weak again." Lila nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the stars, her mind already turning to the next steps. The victory at the Tyrant was crucial, but it's only one battle in a much larger war. The Council won't give up. They'll regroup, and they'll come back stronger. "True," Marcus agreed, a grim look crossing his face. "But we've shown the galaxy we can fight, and we've united the rebels under a common cause. The Valthor, the Trilari, the Exhaler, they see now that the Council can be beaten. It's not just about humanity anymore. It's a galaxy-wide movement." The weight of the moment wasn't lost on Lila. The rebellion was no longer a ragtag group of outcasts fighting for survival. It was a unified front, with humanity at the center, leading a coalition of species that had long suffered under the Council's tyrannical rule. The galaxy was changing, and there was no going back. But the question remained, could they truly topple the Council? Could a handful of rebellious species, no matter how united, defeat the combined might of an empire that had ruled for millennia? As if to answer her unspoken thoughts, a new message came through. This time, from the Trilari. "We are ready." The transmission began, the voice of Trilari Envoy Volan echoing through the bridge. "The Trilari will stand with you fully. We have completed our plans, and we will now fight alongside you, side by side. The Council's grip on the galaxy ends here. Lila's heart surged with a sense of pride and relief. This was the turning point she had hoped for. The Trilari, once hesitant, had now committed themselves fully to the cause. Their resources and diplomatic influence would prove invaluable as the rebellion moved forward. But she knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not fall without a fight. The galaxy was poised on the brink of an all-out war that could consume everything. "Prepare the fleet," Lila ordered, her voice steady but filled with a sense of urgency. "It's time to push back, to take the fight directly to the heart of the Council. We've already crippled their forces, but now we need to take down their leadership." The battle lines were drawn, and the final war for the galaxy's future had begun. Humanity's departure from the Galactic Council had unleashed a fury across the stars that no one could have predicted. With every victory, they gained more support, more resources, and more hope. But the true test still lay ahead. As Lila gazed out at the stars, she saw more than just the vastness of space. She saw the future of the galaxy, a future that humanity would shape, for better or worse. The Council had underestimated them once, but it would not make the same mistake again. The coming days would be filled with bloodshed and sacrifice, but the rebellion was more than ready. They had fought for this moment, and they would not back down. "Let's finish this," Lila said, her voice filled with a quiet determination that resonated throughout the ship. "For the galaxy, for freedom." And as the fleet prepared to move toward the heart of the Council's power, humanity's revolution was no longer just a spark in the dark. It was a blazing fire that could not be extinguished. The dawn of a new era was on the horizon, and the galaxy would never be the same again.